So, Mads,
Here we
computer
go.
space.
Yeah, yeah. So it
Boom. Oh, nice.
feels like something you've played before. Of course, this would have been the first one, the first iteration of it. But I'm guessing you can recognize a certain game here as well.
Yeah. There's definitely a resemblance to certain asteroids.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And this is the first version of computer space. There is an iteration, an updated version that comes out later, I believe, where they also add a hyperspace key,
Oh,
so you
yeah.
can jump out of range. So it
Okay.
just warps you to a random location,
Mm,
if memory serves me right.
yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So this was when I found out that I had forgotten. I've played this once before at the Computerspiele Museum in Berlin, and I don't think I figured out back then that I could actually control where the projectiles were going, because after you shoot, if you turn your ship left or right, the bullet is bending that way as well, so you can really control it quite precisely.
Yeah, and I think it has something to do with the way that. Remember, this is not using a microprocessor. It's
No.
all in logic, so it's
Mm.
probably something to do with the way that the bullets are being calculated.
Yeah, but it's really usable. I mean, after a while, you learn how to control that. So you don't need to be spot on when you fire. You can just steer it into the enemy. So that's actually a funny mechanic. I like that.
Hmm. Yeah, and also the weirdness of the two ships. How the enemy is always two ships.
Yeah,
This was a something that they did in hardware, where they basically just doubled the output
yeah.
of the same electronic components. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, they always move in exact tandem. So it is just the same routine running there. I'd say.
yeah.
But I like the feeling of inertia that you have here. I mean, once your ship has a weight to it, doesn't it? I mean, you need to accelerate, and once you're really up into speed, it's really hard to decelerate, to brake again. And sometimes that's a bit of a problem, actually, because when you see a bullet come flying at you, even from quite far away, you can't steer away from it because you're set on this path right now, and you can't get enough boost to get out of its path. But
Mm.
that's part of the game, of course. But yeah, I thought this was extremely playable for a 50-year-old game. I mean, I'd have fun with this in a coin up.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I mean, it's one of those games where, uh, and Ethan Johnson, who does our corrections, he just wrote a very intricate and very well researched article about how this game was actually very successful. I mean, historically, everybody talks about computer space being a failure
Mm,
because it didn't ignite, the video game craze immediately. But what it did was it got these games into locations where you wouldn't normally get a game. I mean, it's competing in taverns and the like.
yeah, yeah.
And in the taverns, it didn't do so well because, your average guy who's going there to drink and stuff, this was too complicated. This was not what they were looking for at this point.
Mm,
But where it really hit big was in the arcade.
yeah,
And
yeah.
arcades at this time are not what everybody else was thinking. The shopping mall arcade was just in its infancy, but this game kind of made arcades legitimate. It
Mm,
looked futuristic. It was computer technology. It wasn't just those pinball games that are probably still gambling machines.
yeah.
Uh, so
So it definitely looked futuristic. I mean, one thing is that you could control something that was happening on a TV screen, which would have been mind-boggling at that time. But another thing is the cabinet in itself. I mean, I'm assuming you've seen it.
oh
It's
yeah.
this plastic thing that's bent in a funny alien shape. It's so 70s. It's incredible.
Yeah, and apparently that was Nolan Bushnell all the way. It was like he knew he needed to sell this thing and
Mm,
make it look really, really awesome.
yeah, and it really does.
And
It's a beauty.
yeah, it's gorgeous. I mean, first time I ever got to see it, not physically, but first time I ever saw the cabinet. I'd heard about it, but I never saw a picture of it until I watched the movie Soylent Green.
Mm,
Have you
okay.
seen that?
No, I don't think I have.
Oh, dude. Okay, number one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time. Chuck Heston in a
Mm.
not post-apocalypse, but basically a world where overpopulation and the environment have collapsed. Very, very disturbing. Closeness to reality today. But there's this one scene where he goes to this luxury apartment building, and there's a computer space cabinet in
Mm.
as a decoration piece
Yeah.
in the place.
Yeah,
Um,
it is a beauty, and it just screams 70s. It's brilliant design.
Yeah, it is. Now there's not a whole lot of progression to this game other than, get
No,
as far as you can.
it's a fixed timer. You get 100 seconds, and then there's a score for you and a score for the enemy, and then you just need to score higher than the enemy, of course. And if I recall correctly, the cabinet itself only has 3 buttons. So there's one for no 4 buttons. One for thrust, one for swiveling left and right, and one for firing. Isn't that it?
Yeah, and they're all in a row, which
Yeah.
makes it very unintuitive in the original. And of course,
Yeah,
this is
no, it was okay for me. I mean, you've got your index finger and you got 2 fingers on the buttons that make you turn, and then you just use one finger on the thrust and then another on shooting. So just 2 hands, 2 fingers from each works well actually.
that's true. That's true.
Mm.
I mean, I haven't been able to play the game. It
Mm.
wasn't working when I was at that museum.
Oh, okay.
But I always thought it would be a little unintuitive. But you're right; the buttons are so big that you can actually use 2 hands.
Yeah, exactly. That's
You
what
don't
I
have
had
to
at
do it
least.
with one hand. Yeah.
Mm.
Huh.
So
Ah,
that was computer space.
excellent.
Mm.
Let's get back to the show then. Okay. So we close this off.